Hello and welcome to another episode of the Star Bros podcast, episode 56. It's Andor week, so we're obviously doing an episode about Kenobi.
Obviously. No, I think the most obvious thing is that we're doing an episode. It's been so long.
It's been a little while. I'm here with my bro host, by the way, whose name is Ben Skywalker.
And I'm here with my bro host. His name is Jan Solo. Why has it been so long, Jan?
I was in Mexico.
That is one reason.
You were on the moon. I don't remember where you were.
I don't remember that myself. I must have blacked out that whole entire trip. Or Bezos just used some. He gave me the trip and then he gave me a mind wipe. Like wow. C-3PO.
Wow. Yes.
We're explaining everything that's happened. No, you went to Mexico. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time, and there's a story that I've been dying to tell you.
Oh gosh, tell me. You told me you had this story 2 weeks ago.
That was great. And this ties back to, we've had some conversations about going different places and seeing people, like, for example, wearing a Star Wars t-shirt and wondering, are they a Star Wars fan?
Yes.
Or is it just like you can get Star Wars t-shirts at Target and people just think they look cool? And now sometimes
wait. Disclaimer, before you get into this. This is my first time hearing this story, so yes. The reaction that I will give is the first reaction I will have to the story. It might hopefully be the same one that our listeners have.
Maybe. We'll see.
I'm talking this story up a lot.
But okay.
That's kind of on you. You talked it up to me a lot.
Yeah, I've been saving
I'll stop interrupting it. Keep going.
Thank you.
You can go now.
So I'm in Mexico and I'm walking with this Mexican dude, guy named Victor, really nice guy.
Okay.
And we're in this town. It's not a touristy place at all. And we're going down a kind of a narrow street, and a big truck comes like rumbling past. And it's a truck that has an open bed, and it's full of junk.
Okay.
And on the front of the truck, there are like 3 separate bullhorns.
Okay.
And the guy driving the truck has a microphone.
Oh, gosh.
And he's yelling. And it's like distorted, and I know a few words in Spanish, but I don't know what this guy's talking about.
Sure.
So I turn to Victor and I say, "What's going on? What's that guy doing?" And he's like trying to think about it for a second. He's trying to figure out like how to explain what's happening.
If there are translations for the words that are coming through those blowhorns?
Yeah. I'm basically asking him like, "What's the story? What's that guy asking for, or yelling, or what?"
Sure.
And he said, I'm not going to do his accent. He says, "Did you ever see Star Wars?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." Like, we hadn't gotten to that point in our friendship yet. Like, he didn't know.
Yeah, of course. Kind of like so casually. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
And he's like, what are the people in the desert called that pick up droids and whatever else? And I said, "Jawas?" And he said, "Yeah, those are our Jawas." And he went on to explain that, like, if there's like a washing machine on the side of the road or whatever, they'll pick it up and they'll fix it.
And then resell it?
Or scrap it if there's scrap metal that's worth anything in there.
Sure.
And so what they were doing was they were driving around saying, "We're buying and selling metal stuff."
So kind of like the ice cream truck with no ice cream music. Instead of giving you ice cream, we're taking your...
It just gives you tetanus. It's all just rusty metal in the
yes. Instead of giving you ice cream, we'll take your tetanus.
Yes. But I just thought that was super cool. Of like, he was like,
that's a great, yeah.
How do I explain this? And the best way he found was, you know what a Jawa is? They're basically our Jawas. They drive up and down the street, and like if you have a rogue droid, they'll probably steal it and reprogram it and put an inhibitor chip on it and sell it to some moisture farmers somewhere,
or as we learn in Kenobi. What did I just say? Kenobi.
That's his real name. He changed it for Hollywood.
That's what it was exactly. Let's see what happens.
He was Larry Kenobi.
Larry. Randy Kenobi.
And George Lucas said that'll never work. They won't buy that in the Midwest.
We see right through your in the Midwest. Like he was just envisioning a guy at Pep Boys who didn't know.
Right. Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, maybe.
Wow. What? I don't even remember. But something about Kenobi. We see something in Kenobi that tied to whatever you said, and now I've forgotten it thanks to our crazy escapade down memory lane.
But so how have you been, man?
I've been fine. Oh my gosh. Well, since the last time that we recorded, I had vertigo. That sucked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I do not wish that on any of our listeners.
Better now.
Or any of my yes, I'm better now. I was going to say any of my worst enemies too. I wouldn't. It's terrible.
Ugh.
It is really terrible.
I really felt for you
And
there.
it was for like a week straight.
Awful.
Like not just like episodic or like, oh, it happened one day and just got over the next. Like, no, from Sunday to Sunday, I was at home, couldn't drive, could barely walk without holding the walls. It was terrible.
Awful.
So, yeah, that one was interesting. That was while I think you were in Mexico.
That might have been from the mind wipe from Jeff Bezos.
That's what that...
If you think about it.
Whoa.
Right? Yes.
That's crazy how we just connected all
Yikes.
those things. Thanks a lot, Jeff, for the vertigo. We're on a first name basis now. No, it's been good. Yeah, we are a little bit. Well, let's just say sorry to our fans. We're sad to be late with this, but we are going to make it up to you by coming with an episode this week, and then immediately following it up next week with an episode. Mostly for you, but also because we probably won't be able to wait to talk about Andor. Either.
Yeah,
So
we're going to be excited about that.
It's
Because we're getting
two purposes.
three episodes are dropping this week on Wednesday.
Yeah. And people are very tight-lipped. We haven't heard very much. And there are chances, like we've been communicating the past weekend with people who know what happened in the first 3 episodes, and they haven't really shared anything. That's been pretty good.
And so that's an endorsement. And someday we hope to be a part of that group of people
That'd
who
be fun.
also gets to see stuff, but doesn't spill the beans, so to
Yes.
speak. And nobody's spilling the beans, which is great because we all want to, we want to enjoy it fresh. We want to go in without any preconceived notions. We've all seen the same trailer, whatever. We're going to see the same show together on Wednesday.
We're going to see it together. You and I are going to talk about it together. Let's talk a little bit about what happened this weekend because it was pretty incredible.
Oh my gosh.
We had, for those that may not have heard, there was this little event this weekend that was called Podathon, where a dozen probably different creators in the Star Wars universe decided to come together with all the guest speakers that they could wrangle up, and BROAXIUM for the second year in a row was able to nab Charles Soule, and you were able to have a great interview with him. But then, of course, like some others got like Ryan Johnson, we had Seth Green there, and Kristen Baver, and the list just goes on.
Some cast members from Andor.
Yep, father and son brought them on, who we've had on the podcast in the past. They're great.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a wonderful day. And all of this is, to listen to people talk about Star Wars all day. Yeah, that's the only reason that we would ever do this. No, there's more reasons. We did it for charity, for Make-A-Wish. And what was it? Over 17,000? The goal was 10.
The goal was 10. I think last year the goal was 5, and they hit 8. And so this year they said, let's try to raise $10,000 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which most people, pretty much everybody knows. But if you're not familiar, they basically grant wishes for kids who are facing really serious illness. So kids who are having a really tough time, and they want to go to Disney World or whatever.
Sure.
And so it creates an experience for them and their families.
Yeah.
Creates memories for them and their families. And some of the wishes the kids want, that they're things that they couldn't normally afford on their own.
Exactly.
And so this year we said we're going to do $10,000 and beat $10,000 on Podathon Day.
Yeah.
And then people kept giving.
Kept going, yes.
And so it's like...
And I think it's still live now, if I'm not mistaken, as of recording.
And why not? So if you feel so inclined, go to the Podathon 2022 website. I think it's just thepodathon.com, and you can give a little bit of money to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And I think part of that ensures that the bar has to keep getting raised because we want to do a 4th Podathon. And it has to be attractive and interesting and exciting for all the people who are going to watch and listen. So we just need to keep getting great guests, and we need to keep getting great Star Wars creators on to chat with the guests, and who knows who we'll have next year. So that was a really cool experience. But we got to talk to Charles Soule.
I got him last year. You got him this year.
I got him this year.
Turn. Yep.
It was very cool.
You did great, by the way.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We had some technical difficulties.
That's
how it's pronounced, I think. But yeah, his connection was sort of in and out. So we lost him a couple of times. Unfortunately, a couple of times when he was talking. So we missed bits and pieces of what he was sharing. But he shared a couple of cool things that were, I think, fun takeaways for me. One of them at the very end that I'll spotlight is he talked about I think Chris asked the question about comic books, about Star Wars comic books in general.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that BROAXIUM is really known for is Chris, Dan do an amazing job with these. They've built a nice following with their the Quick Shot of BROAXIUM, where they do spoiler-free previews of Star Wars comic books that are coming out this week. And you and I have since joined on the bandwagon, and we do the High Republic books. And Charles Soule is one of the guys who writes the High Republic.
That's right.
And so I think Chris asked him a question about what's the importance of comic books in the Star Wars universe, and he answered in a way that I didn't expect. And you guys can go find this on YouTube. I'd recommend watching it. He said something to the effect of, like, if you like that Star Wars feeling, like if you get a special feeling when you're enjoying Star Wars, that's in the comic books.
Yeah.
And you can go get more of it from the comic books. And I was like, that's just such a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like I get like a little feeling from, I love when I'm watching the movie, like I get a certain vibe. I was rewatching some Kenobi before you came over.
Yeah.
And I was getting that, and it's in the comic books too. So that's really cool. The other thing that we talked about, which I know has been kind of hotly debated in some circles, pronunciations.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Pronunciations across, especially his work, because the I of the Nile, and he did say it's the Nile.
The Nile, it is.
Yep.
Not Nihil.
I was corrected to say Nihil. That's apparently incorrect, but who cares? Because Charles Soule said he's not hung up on it.
All right. And then I think was this alluded to, like Han and Han, and it was your point of like Leia and Leah.
So he said that, and I made the point that that's fair. Nobody says falcon in day-to-day life, like a falcon flew over your head or something, right?
Falcon, yeah,
it's a falcon.
It's a falcon,
right? So some things are just said differently in Star Wars.
Or just like AT-AT and AT-AT. Like, yeah. I'm sorry, I will die on the AT-AT hill. That feels more right to me.
Yeah, there's no such thing as an AT-AT in my head canon. If there is in yours, cool.
And I know some people's arguments is like AT-AT came first and the STST came, ATST, isn't that what it is? The one with just the two legs. Like that one came second in Jedi. And so, you know what? Fine. My argument though is still the same. You don't say AT-ST, right?
I was going to say, is there one, maybe in the High Republic, they can make one for cats called a PSPSPS?
Okay. I get where you're going, and you're helping my argument, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
But that's all my point is. Like, you can't say AT-ST. You have to say AT-AT, So that's my argument.
Yeah. But
anyway.
and his whole thing was, I don't really care how you pronounce the names of the characters.
Doesn't matter.
He said, as long as you're enjoying the stories and you're into the book or the comic book or whatever, and you're having a good time and you're getting that Star Wars feeling, like he feels like he's done his job, and that's a win. So
yeah, that's true.
That I think that was a good takeaway. But I also think it's cool. Like, we didn't get a chance to get into this a little bit off the Star Wars topic. His new comic book series, 8 Billion Genies, which the premise of this is everybody in the world gets a genie and gets one wish. Just one wish. And then it becomes a big strategy game of like, how do you survive this?
Yeah. Okay.
But it takes place in St. Clair Shores.
Yes.
Which is not too far from where you grew up in Michigan.
And I don't know if you saw this, but I said something in the chat. I said, being originally from Michigan, because he said something around like, St. Clair Shores is just like this weird neighborhood of Detroit. He said weird.
Did he?
So, yes.
Is it?
I mean, to be honest, maybe it's so weird I haven't been there before.
Oh.
And I didn't live that far away from it, but
No,
I never went there personally. But I just responded back and said, being someone who originally grew up in Michigan, I can tell you that we are all weird. And then Raven responded, and she goes, being originally from Wisconsin, I can attest that you are correct. Like she was loading on with the Michigan.
Can I ask you something about being a Michigander?
Sure.
Real quick. And
then we'll get to the news.
Then we'll get to the news. But before I wrap up, also very exciting about 8 Billion Genies is it's been picked up by Amazon, and Amazon is making it into a movie or a series. I can't remember which one, but I think Amazon wants to do a bunch with it apparently, which is very exciting. Cool. But being that you're a Michigander, I wanted to ask you an etiquette question about the Midwest. because I am an uncouth and rude East Coaster. I wanted to see, I read this online. I wanted to see if it was true. I read that people in the Midwest are often very polite to one another. And the question somebody posed was, as somebody from the Midwest, how do you get a guest to leave your house when they've overstayed their welcome? Did I send this to you?
You don't. You let them stay the night. I don't know.
Somebody said, I think somebody from Michigan said, what you do is you lift up both your hands, and you slap your thighs, and you go, well.
For some reason, I feel like I've seen that or done that before.
And then the other person knows.
Yeah, maybe.
Have you done that?
I think I have. Well, I'm doing it now. I'm just like thinking about it now.
And people know what that means.
But for those who can't see us, which is everybody, we're slapping our knees when we did that. Both hands on the knees at the same time. Well, I gotta go.
But you don't even have to say that other part. You slap your knees and say well, and then people are like,
I feel like that is universal. Like it could work anywhere.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe not in the East Coast. Where we just say get lost.
We're pretty rude and uncouth. Don't let the door hit you.
Because I might be swinging hard.
Wow. Okay, let's do the news because you're out of control.
All right. What do we call that one? News from across the galaxy. Go back to Mexico. Take that craziness with you. You made me laugh so hard with the video. Do not make me do that again. Right before we recorded, how dare you?
I don't ever know what's going to happen when we do the jingle.
I don't know either. And then when it happens, I'm like, what is wrong with us? By us, I mean, no, that's too, I'm Midwestern. I won't be mean. That's right. Just look past that. Thanks a lot.
Well,
time for me to go. All right. News. Let's start with D23 because that is where all the news came from in the last 3 weeks plus that we haven't been together. We got a lot. We got a trailer, probably the biggest thing, a trailer for Mando Season 3.
Yep.
I just remember watching that, and the biggest thing that sticks out in my mind was all the Bo-Katan stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything looked cool. It was so cool. We got to see Mandalore, like that we're going back to Mandalore, and it looks like it's seen better days,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got Bo-Katan that's on the throne. It looks dreary outside. Like, that hit me hard. That was really cool to see where we could be going, and the fact that we're going a bit more into not just the Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal, Din Djarin Mandalorian, but the Mandalorian, all the clans, and as a race.
That's I think where it's going, which is super interesting.
And where does the race aspect cross over with the person that the show is named after?
Mm-hmm.
Cannot wait. This looks like we're finally getting to some really deep stuff.
Agreed.
Deep waters.
And you know what? I was going back and I was looking through my notes because we're preparing for today's episode, which is life lessons from Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep.
And I was looking through some notes and I just stumbled across this thing about, it was a news item a couple of months ago that Katie Sackhoff was canceling appearances at Comic-Cons because she was going back and doing reshoots.
Oh yeah,
and
I remember that.
Yeah, and I assume all of that's wrapped up nicely now, and potentially made packaging the trailer a little bit easier or something. I don't know, but I wonder if they were kind of tweaking the story and featuring her more prominently. My imagination runs wild, but I felt really good about the trailer that I saw because I think it's going to be a nice, complicated story. I'll put it that way.
Very complicated, and a lot more Mandalorians.
Yes.
Just seeing them all fall out of whatever spacecraft they were in.
Yes.
Looked amazing.
And where do they pick it up? Like, I keep thinking about that because the end of season 2 was so interesting. And I just keep wondering
where do we go from here? I mean, we kind of went there already with Book of Boba Fett.
With season 2.5 and Book of Boba Fett.
Season 2.5. The epilogue to the I don't know what to say.
Epilogue, I think is how it's pronounced.
No. Yeah, it's and they address that in the trailer. Like there's the talk
the armorer.
The armorer.
Yeah.
There's the line of you guys are your own clan, but we've still got a problem in that you aren't a Mandalorian anymore.
Yep.
And so how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah.
So not to mention, you've got Bo-Katan, who doesn't look very happy.
Right.
In this trailer. Like, she looks like she's pretty upset that she doesn't have the Darksaber at the moment. And how does that consume her mind as the one who's sitting on the throne?
I think it does. I think it completely consumes her. And
because she's on the throne. She's like, I'm the leader, and I need to have the Darksaber to lead. So there's going to be a conflict.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering. I'm wondering if Din Djarin's like trying to pick his side. Like, am I on the side of the armorer and the dogmatic view that, or what's the word that Bo-Katan uses in season 2?
Zealot.
Yeah. Am I on this side, or am I with Bo-Katan, who really wants his Darksaber from me? Like, he's going to be conflicted, I think.
Yep.
So it should be really interesting to see.
Should be great. And when do we expect that? Beginning of 23?
Early 2023, I think, is what they said. Because next segue onto another piece of news. We got some Bad Batch updates.
Bad Batch is coming. Yep.
In January.
Yep.
Right in the new year. So we'll have that to look forward to. There wasn't much more said on that, I don't think.
No. So hang on a minute. So we're going to have Andor is going to run until roughly American Thanksgiving. And I say that because we do have some folks who enjoy the show from Canada. So American Thanksgiving is typically the last Thursday of November. I think Andor runs roughly up until then. So are we going to have to go a whole month in December without new Star Wars content? Because
how dare they?
Yeah. Right?
How dare they give us time with our families and during the holidays? Gosh, that's rude.
I am disappointed.
Okay, what else? Tales of the Jedi was another that they gave us a whole trailer for. And I feel like we just got this announcement. So the fact that like they've kept this under wrap and announced it, and then just a month later given us some footage from it.
Yes. And this
month
one,
or two later.
This one's the one for the little kids?
No, I don't think so. I think this is like Clone Wars, like Bad Batch, like it's like from the same creators and things like that. So like it's advertised like that. I mean, in the trailer.
Hard to keep them all straight.
Oh, it is so hard to keep them straight. I mean, it's going to be fine for the kids, but it's going to be for everybody. I think you might be thinking of a different one. That's more about like younglings.
I think Skeleton Crew is more about younglings.
No, I think there's another one even after that.
Okay, got it. Skeleton Crew is the Jude Law one.
That's the Jude Law one. I know. So much to keep straight.
Yeah.
That's the Jude Law one.
Which we just saw something interesting about that one, and that is that Jon Favreau told the story that the creators of Skeleton Crew got the idea for Skeleton Crew while they were working on Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So I wonder what that's about.
Yeah, same. That'll be interesting. Sounded like we didn't get much from it, and most people at D23 maybe heard a little bit more. We didn't get that much.
Yeah.
But no, back to Tales of the Jedi for a second. It looks like we're going to get some more Ahsoka, some more Ashley Eckstein voiced Ahsoka, which is exciting. Yeah. And we're going to get some Dooku.
Oh.
Back when Qui-Gon was his Padawan.
Oh, man.
And there was one scene in particular, like I can see his face. Is it Revan? Is it that they face off with?
Revan?
Revan?
Yeah.
I'm like getting it confused with Reva now. Thanks. Who I think we saw in it. Oh, it just looks amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that one now too. Thanks. What else?
Acolyte?
The Acolyte. Was there anything else at D23?
I'm looking at my notes. I don't think so.
Okay.
Acolyte casting.
So, I didn't know too many of these, but I'm excited about one of them. So let me pull that back up now. There was a casting call for the Acolyte, and there again, like I said, some of the names I didn't know, but the one name that stood out, the announcement was really about, was this Charlie Barnett, who, interestingly enough, remember it's Leslie Headland. I think that's the showrunner and putting it together, and she had created the Netflix series Russian Doll. He's originally from that. So the fact that she is coming back, or he is coming back to be in a series that she is now leading, when she knew him from the other one, I said that all backwards and convolutedly, but you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. That's a good sign.
So yeah, so that's who is coming back, but there were some other names that were attached to it. We already knew about the Amanda Stenberg one, but then there was, I didn't see this. I know you've seen this. Lee Jung-jae, I think I'm saying his name right, from Squid Games.
Oh gosh, yeah,
is going to be in it. Jodie Turner-Smith, who I haven't seen this, Queen and Slim. And then one more. Manny Jacinto.
Yeah, where do I know that name from?
The Good Place.
Get out. No way.
Jason is coming to
No
Star Wars,
way.
y'all.
Blake Bortles rules. That is amazing.
Falls. Yes. Oh, dip. We're getting Jason and Star Wars.
Wow.
I'm so excited right now.
Dude, so I don't really follow the NFL. You might be able to tell this, but I'm a little bit of a nerd. And so like,
which means you can't be a jock too. Is that what? Are we still using that term?
I don't know. I think because there's some jockey people that like Star Wars, which is awesome. But
I love hockey. I like them both.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't really know.
Somewhere there's a Chris going, who?
Yeah. I didn't really know what the deal was with Blake Bortles, speaking of Jason from The Good Place. And so I Googled him, and I found one short interview with him. And I'll tell you...
with Blake?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So the nice young lady interviewing him asked him two questions. She said, when you first wake up in the morning, what's on your mind? And he said, I gotta pee.
Yeah.
And she said, what would you be doing if you weren't playing professional football? And he goes, I don't know, construction.
Okay.
And I was like, no
do
wonder
you want to do that?
No wonder Jason from The Good Place loves this guy.
he's Jason through and through. He's just like, I'm gonna go play this guy just like his
basically
his greatest fan.
Basically.
Yeah, so that's really it for the Acolyte. Here's what I kind of reacted to, and this is terrible for me to say. I'm sorry. Which kind of goes into one other piece of news. It is very nice to see this progressing, because we've had a few that have stopped progressing in Star Wars.
Yeah.
The biggest one being Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
Which has been officially taken off the release docket as of a few days ago. So everyone reading into that as much as they will, but we've seen a lot of people come and go without being able to do what they came on to do.
True.
So I'm just really happy to see that this is moving along.
That's an excellent point. And I think some people have speculated that the fact that Rian Johnson is out there talking about Star Wars again may signal that trilogy that's been on ice for a little while, or some version of Rian Johnson coming back to Star Wars, may come to fruition.
Hopefully, yeah, because I want to see more of what he has in store for Star Wars. That's separate from the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
Because as a storyteller, he's fantastic. Like, let's see what he can do.
Yeah.
In the Star Wars universe without any strings attached, rules attached, everything like that.
Do you think? I think Taika Waititi learned from that, and we've discussed how one of his comments about him making his Star Wars movie is he's not going to write something about Chewbacca's grandmother or whatever.
Yeah.
He's going somewhere else in a different time, different place, but in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, let's just hope that he survives it. Because have you heard all the controversy surrounding him now?
No.
Oh, let's not get into it then.
Okay, yeah, tell me later.
Yeah, it's just enough to make your head spin. Apparently people are mad because Thor wasn't as good as they wanted it to be, and in some of the things he said, I don't care. It was fine. It was good for me. Let's see what he has planned for Star Wars.
You're supposed to just get some popcorn and sit back and just enjoy
enjoy
it.
this, people. Come on.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
All right. Any other news?
But I'll quote Taika real quick about when the news first came out that he's making this Star Wars movie, and we've quoted this before, so apologies for having to sit through it again. But he tweeted something like, so the news came out, he's making a Star Wars movie, he's writing it himself, so it's really going to be a Taika Star Wars movie. And he tweeted something to the effect of, I can't wait to ruin Star Wars for all of you.
Yes. He'll ruin it for some people. We know that.
Yep. And I just appreciate that self-awareness that, like, you're already making people angry. Like, but
he was doing that even well before with Thor. So.
But I love him. I think he's great. I can't wait for it.
Can't wait. No, the only other news that's out there is we can talk about Jedi's Return real quick, which was the making of Obi-Wan that came out.
I love that.
Yeah, you watched it. I watched it. What'd you think? Just real quick.
I thought it was really nice because it felt like so many parts of the series were a little bit sentimental and kind of tugged at our heartstrings.
Oh, yeah.
As we're watching the main character sort of have that experience of being sentimental and going back through his past, and it felt like that for us. And so it was cool to see behind the scenes that they were having very similar vibes. in a very similar experience.
Yeah.
And so that part of it was cool. But you know me, I always like seeing how are they making it? What are the special effects? Interesting to see like what they shoot first, what they shoot later. And it's really cool to hear from the directors, the people making it. It just it makes you understand why it's so hard to get something made, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, look at this army of people that it takes to make it at all, much less make it good.
Yeah.
Like it's just astounding. So
yeah, I totally agree. Like your point about the directors and what they were thinking, like Deborah Chow talked about how she really loved telling the father-daughter story of this series. Like that was her favorite part. So you kind of look at that, and she talked a little bit about her own father relationship there. And so just to see what inspired her in making this series was cool. I really liked, I think it was Ewan McGregor's line, how he said that this is all about exploring how a man who's broken gets it all back.
Yeah.
And I just love that.
We'll get into that.
We will, yeah. But like that was a great line. One of my favorites though was Moses Ingram's line. She just said, "I just never thought it could be me." Talking about her being able to play this role, and the way she delivered it was even really strong. And so, I guess it made me pause for a second and think about how important this was for her making this, and kind of thinking, I never thought it could be possible. I never thought that someone, I don't know how she was thinking about it, that like someone like her or whatever, like could be able to do this. But, the fact that she got that chance and was feeling that sentimental attachment to it made me think of her performance in a different light. She was fantastic. In my view.
I was definitely a fan. And I appreciated Deborah Chow's perspective on, looking back in Star Wars, there's not a ton of female villains to hang your hat on. And to have that experience of like a good, tough female villain. And she wanted to create that. And I think she nailed it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's super cool too. And it sounds like we're kind of getting into our next segment here.
We are getting into our next segment. We're done with the news. Let's do it. So what do we call that one?
More to the story.
Dun, 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 dun.
Nice.
Thank you. I was practicing. No, I wasn't. Let's get into it.
So
Obi-Wan.
How did you think about this? So the gist of this is we occasionally do an episode where we take some lessons from Star Wars, and I think Star Wars is ripe with different bits of wisdom because it's kind of built on that foundation. Like you think about the stuff that George Lucas referenced when he was creating this whole big universe, this whole story in his mind. He touched on some fundamental things, fundamental human things, fundamental pieces of mythology, the ways that we tell stories, families, things like that. So things can really hit home in Star Wars, and we realized a while ago that, gosh, there are lessons that we can take away. We can learn stuff from this.
Yeah.
Including the stuff that's coming out now. The new stuff
totally
has lessons baked into it. And I think this latest series, this Kenobi series, is one that's ripe with lessons, because I think a big part of it is it starts in a tough place.
It starts in a really tough place. We talk about a man who's broken, and how does he get it back? I've got an idea of how to kind of kickstart the conversation with maybe two things. The first one is actually from the book that just released recently called Be More Obi-Wan, written by Kelly Knox, who was one of the speakers at Podathon this past weekend. And I love these books. I've got a couple of these now, and they're just like, what are some of the things that you can learn about life from this character or from this theme, right? And I don't know. I really liked just having this little book, and you can read it in like an hour.
It's pretty bite-sized.
It's very bite-sized, and every page has I'll show you. It's like a small paragraph, and that's it. A picture and a small paragraph, and that's it. You can get through it very quickly. But they say something in the introduction, and it was simply this: did you know you can overcome just about any obstacle by being true to yourself and doing it with a smile? How is that for summing up the series that we just watched in Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, maybe Kelly got to watch it ahead of time, but was she thinking about like the connection that line itself could have to what we were just about to watch? I don't know. Kelly, if you did, let me know. Otherwise, Good job, because I think you nailed it. I don't know. React to that. What do you think?
I dig that, and I think we see bits and pieces of that, not just in the main character, but some of the other characters we see. We see that in Princess Leia.
Yeah.
In this, she's sort of unapologetically herself. Gets her in trouble in some ways, but I think it's all kind of rooted in a good place. Like, she gets into an argument with her cousin about being nice to a droid because it's good manners.
Yes.
And he makes a comment about lower life forms and whatever, and it kind of spins out of control. But it's coming from a good place, and she's being herself.
By the way, that theme then comes back later. It's not like it was a throwaway line. Like we actually see her live that out again later with Ned B, right? That's the name of the droid. And in a specific line, I'm looking for it because I wrote it down. In part 3, Leia goes, but what if he has something to say, talking about Ned 3? Like, she kind of realizes that even though he's a droid and even though he can't speak, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have a purpose or doesn't have something he wants to contribute to the world at large. And Tala's response is really cool too. She just goes, actions speak louder than words. And then later we see Ned B sacrifice himself to give Tala just a few more moments.
And it stings. It hurts to watch that.
It does. And you see like that connection between, because it's like, you've seen it a few times in every episode, this connection between the two of them. So it hurts. But again, actions speak louder than words. And that was his last action.
Oh, I love that.
So we see that that's like not even a B story. That's like a C, D story. Like that's like really deep embedded in there, but we see exactly what you just alluded to. Yeah. With Leia. One other thing, tying back to your point on, we like to do this with some of the content. Yeah. That's coming out. I was noticing as we were going through that masterpiece of an opening that gives like a, in part 1, right before they
so good. That deserves an Emmy
recap
right
there. They have the line from Anakin when he's talking to Palpatine where he is telling Palpatine about what he thinks of his master, and he describes him as wise as let me start that over. Sure. As wise as Master Yoda and as powerful as Master Windu, which you might remember. I think it was from Attack of the Clones that he said that. And was it Clones or was it 3? I can't remember. Anyway, but I think we wanted to dive into this character who is defined by his wisdom, and it's a little bit different from the Yoda wisdom. It's a little bit more practical. It's a little bit more real life experience. It feels like,
especially here, yeah,
especially in this, and frankly, it feels a little bit more. I said real, but like he comes from a very broken place, and we're learning that through the comic series that just came out, like how deep that feeling runs. But to see where he lands on the good side every single time, wasn't there a meme that was like showed all the bad things he went through?
Everything he loses, all the heartache, all the pain, and never once turns to the dark side.
Exactly. So that's the character we want to explore tonight.
Yeah. Maybe on that note, I'll offer up one piece of maybe a life lesson, maybe maybe but maybe just like a fun thing to ponder a little bit. So I wrote down in here, maybe like a little bit of a slogan you can take with you. Some people don't get their theme music until much later in life.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Obi-Wan did not.
Literally didn't.
He literally didn't. And if you stop and think about that. So Obi-Wan Kenobi was a character in the public conscious for almost 45 years when John Williams sat down and wrote his theme. And Yoda has a theme. Rey has a theme. Just a few years ago got her own theme. But Obi-Wan didn't have one. And it sort of coincides with the fact that some of Obi-Wan's defining moments don't come until later on in life. Obviously, his relationship with Anakin when they were both younger is really important to the overall story. But when he's sort of living in despair on his own, kind of tucked away from the world, living out some purpose, but kind of toiling away in secret. That's ultimately where he starts in his journey to being the main character with his own theme music and his truly redemptive arc. which is way past his high-flying Jedi days.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, which I hope, maybe gives some people hope.
Maybe, honestly, that just kind of makes me think of how we might all have different themes for different times in our life.
True.
And maybe what this is because if you think about the theme, it's adventurous, but it's also someone who's kind of, reached a point in their life where, they feel like something's missing and they're on a path to find out, who they are now.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like the Jedi, the general, like those are all days that are behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Who is he going to be now? And that's a difficult thing for him to figure out at the beginning of this.
And one of the people in I think it's Deborah Chow says in one of the interviews that part of the story is a search for hope, actively looking for it.
Yeah, like it's not just going to land in your lap.
It's not gonna hit you like inspiration or something. You're not just gonna wake up one day hopefully. He's out looking for it through this story that we get to see.
Which I wonder if that's how we started in on day one in isolation. If you just went, okay, here I am. Where are you, Qui-Gon? Fall in my lap, just like tell me what to do next.
Yep.
And it didn't happen.
Thousands of days later of him doing that.
Thousands. So much time had to go by. And you know how it is. Like when time passes, you're like, at one point you just lose faith and you lose hope. And this is a man who, after going through Order 66, losing his best friend, losing all of his friends, in the Jedi Order, losing that sense of purpose that he had, being on the council, and all of that is gone. And now he's not babysitting, but like he's just now got to watch over a boy, and the father doesn't even, or the adopted father doesn't want him to be in the picture and all this stuff. Like he's processing a ton. So one of the first life lessons that I guess I took from this is how Obi-Wan's teaching us that we have to be allowed to process these really deep and difficult emotions that we deal with, especially grief and loss. And that's what he is dealing with in this episode.
Or maybe not dealing with as successfully as you would hope.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think he's in a really difficult place, and he has lost hope. And you see him try to, you kind of see insight into like his therapy session a bit, if you want to call it that, with Tala on a couple occasions, where he's like, I don't know how to get over these. Like, I can't forget the past.
Yeah.
How do I move on if I can't forget it? And, eventually he finds the way, but it's 10 years of him dealing with that.
And that actually lines up really nicely with one of my lessons, which is the way out of something is often through it. So you can't avoid the trauma of the past. And I think it is like, it's genuinely traumatic. Like he has kind of, people have lauded the show and applauded it, saying that some of the things that he sees and experiences look like their experience of PTSD.
Yeah.
And
well, that's exactly what this is.
Seeing Anakin off on the hillside, the way that he remembers him, with sort of an anxious expectation of like, where is this guy? Is he sort of like sneaking up on me? I don't feel safe. Like all that stuff people talk about feels pretty darn accurate. But I think he starts to process when he jumps kind of headfirst into his calling, this adventure that he ends up going on.
Yeah.
And talks about it, and it kind of dusts off who he used to be, and kind of puts the hero hat on again. He starts to really come face to face with the reality of everything that happened when he finds out that Anakin is still alive, and what does that mean, and I might run into him, and what am I going to do if I do, and all that stuff. I think he starts to kind of go through it.
Yeah, a bit of muscle memory kicks in, you can see on occasion, and you really do see it, but you also see the struggle with every move, which is, you tip your hat to Ewan for acting that.
Oh my gosh, he's so good.
Like I'm thinking about the part 2 where he has to catch Leia, or part 4 where he has to hold the glass and keep the water in for just long enough, right? And how every one of those efforts feels like a Herculean task for him.
He looks so tired.
He looks tired. He looks like it's been a while. Like he remembers how to do it. His mind is still sharp, but his body isn't. Mm-hmm. And so he's got a lot to work through, but he doesn't lose faith. He doesn't lose hope. He keeps working at it. But you said something that actually sparked the thought. The whole idea that you have to, what did you say? You have to kind of go through.
The path out of whatever it is often through it.
Okay, so remember at the beginning, before we started recording, that I remembered something.
Oh yeah.
So this leads perfectly into that. So in part 3, when we get that scene where they're he's discovering the path for the first time, and Tala's like explaining it and showing him the writings on the wall and all the names of people and Quinlan. Well, you're laughing. What?
I was just thinking of something else. Go ahead.
Okay, now I really want to know.
I was just thinking. I'm so sorry, because we're having a serious conversation here.
Are you thinking that Onion video?
No.
Okay.
I was just thinking about what if this is the first time somebody's listened to this show?
They're probably like, they love Star Wars.
Well, yeah. But then they heard the news from across the galaxy jingle, so to speak, from this episode.
You're back at minute 20 of this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Carry on.
That's hilarious.
But I hope if it is the first time you're listening that you made it through that. If you're still here, thank you. I'm impressed.
Yeah, we love it. Okay, back to Sirius. No, the part where Obi-Wan sees the writing on the wall and sees Quinlan Voss's inscription on that, and Leia asks what it was, and he eventually translated it and said, "Only when the eyes are closed can you truly see." And then Leia asks, "What?" And Obi-Wan responds with, "The way." And so I had I had to think about that. Like, what does that mean? What is that all about? And I think you just said it. Like, if you want to come out on the other side of this, all right, you gotta go down the hard path.
You know what else it makes me think of, though?
What?
Doesn't he say to Luke at one point when he's training not to trust your eyes because they deceive you? Something to that effect.
He puts the blast shield on him, right?
He puts the blast shield on. Maybe that's where he got that nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, like you have to learn to trust your other instincts more than your eyes and what you can see.
Maybe that stuck with him and became a part of his repertoire when he was teaching Luke later.
I like that. Ooh, deep, very deep. No, but the thing it also reminded me of was a quote that when I was in Belgium, a guy had given me this bookmark. And it was a beautiful bookmark. It was a picture of like a cabin with the lights on, and there was some footprints in the snow leading up to it, and moonlight and nice forest. It's a pretty bookmark. I still have it.
Cool.
And I'm sitting here and I remember the quote that's on it, and it's in French, and the quote is "Nul peut atteindre l'aube sans passer par le chemin de la nuit." Translation: You're just like off in another world now. Mm-hmm. Did I whisk you away? Sorry about that. Translation: none can reach the dawn without taking the path of night. And the
holy guacamole, that's good.
It's good, right?
Yeah.
It was I think I'm saying his name right. Khalil Gibran, who's a Lebanese writer.
Yeah. He gets quoted a lot, but I've never read any of his stuff. Huh? That's deep. I love that.
Yeah. But that's how accurate is that for Obi-Wan, right? Like, you're not going to be able to see through to the other side of the sea, Qui-Gon, until you go through the trials that you have to face, which is what we eventually see in part 6. And so this quote in part 3, I think, is the same quote, just said differently.
Yeah.
Like,
I think you're right.
You have to go through this hard time if you want to come out on the other side, Obi-Wan. And so he's finally starting to realize that now.
So we finally come across Obi-Wan after all these years, sort of in his night, and he's a little bit resistant too, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't, I think, see himself the way that he once did. And so, like, one of the things, and we've already hit on this. One of the lessons was, for me, was the active search for hope. You can't. We touched on this. It doesn't just fall into your lap. You have to go looking for it, even if you're not, I guess, doing so with expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems like there is a lot of self-doubt. From the moment when he talks to the Organas, you can tell he's not the hero that he once was. He doesn't have that confidence.
No, it's like that was a former person you're expecting something out of.
Yeah.
So,
And
he's not here anymore.
And a piece of advice that I heard years
By the way,
ago.
that's why he's changed his name, right? I mean, not just to stay in hiding.
It's a completely different identity.
Right. He's like, that's not me anymore.
Right.
I can't do what you're asking me to because I'm not Obi-Wan, I'm Ben.
Right.
Right. It goes down to even just the name change.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No problem. So a piece of advice that I heard years ago, which is good advice for people who are struggling with significant mental health issues, or maybe, whatever, however you want to rate them for yourself. But if you're struggling with anxiety, depression, somebody told me years ago, anything worth doing is worth doing bad.
Okay.
And I thought, that's not the line, right? But the thinking is, when you're really struggling, if you can get yourself to do some of it, like if you can eat a little bit,
Yeah.
if you can brush your teeth for 10 seconds rather than the full amount of time.
Yeah.
Like anything worth doing is worth doing badly if you can sort of get yourself to go through the motions of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where Obi-Wan starts too.
That's raising kids.
Yeah.
By the way, you take any win you can get.
Yeah. But you can see like his physicality is sort of gone. So when he's doing some of his stunts of, he used to fly around and jump and flip and whatever, and it's not coming as naturally anymore, but it's worth it. It's worth doing. And so he's kind of pushing through it.
Mm-hmm.
And
even to the point where he's facing his biggest enemy, Darth Vader now, who, by the way, over the last 10 years has done nothing but get stronger. Even though his body has really failed him, he has done nothing but get stronger.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan's gone the other way. He's sort of he's kind of decayed a little bit.
Yeah,
he's gotten frail and all that.
Muscle atrophy.
Atrophied is the word I was looking for. Yeah,
is it? Oh, okay.
He's atrophied. His and not just body, but like mind, body, and spirit of all atrophied, with expectation of seeing Qui-Gon and never appearing, and just sort of the hot sun and this job that he has. We haven't even talked about that.
What job? Of Leia? Of
no of like working on this assembly line, like cutting.
Oh yeah,
meat, like
yeah.
Talk about soul sucking. I thought that was so one of the things that we learned in whatever the behind the scenes thing was called. What was that called?
The Jedi's Return.
Jedi's Return. Yep. One of the things that we learned was that scene of them being on that assembly line cutting the fish or whatever it is. That was the first day, first shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it is that they prioritize, like, ever since I learned a little bit about how movie making is made, we all know that it's not necessarily sequential the way that you see it on the screen.
Right.
So I don't know why they picked that or whatever, but I thought, what a great way to set the tone for the whole shoot ahead of this once mighty General Kenobi. Here he is.
It's filleting fish.
Filleting fish, wearing a dirty old smock.
Getting pushed around a little bit. I mean, that guy, by the way, well acted. I always tip my hat to anyone that can make me hate their acting or hate their character.
Yeah.
By
very
their
hateable. The boss is very hateable.
Oh my gosh, very hateable. And all I'm thinking that whole time is, Obi-Wan can take this guy.
Yeah, if he wants to.
If he wants to.
But maybe Ben Kenobi can't.
But that's how deep this hole is that he's in, that he's got to find his way out of. He's like, he can't even stand up to this guy when it wouldn't take more than a flick to knock him off balance and show him who's boss.
Yep.
I mean, just like it wouldn't have taken more than a flick to knock me off balance a couple weeks ago. See what I did there? Anyway, that was bad. Really bad.
Nope. It's okay.
My wife is rolling her eyes right now. Anyway, no, I think that's right. I think, I mean, I just think, again, where we find him in this deep, dark place, and your point earlier about like PTSD, remember, he's just fresh off the Clone Wars and hasn't been able to process all that. And it ended not with a win, but with Order 66, with a loss for them. And all of his friends being wiped out, including his best friend.
And he's off in hiding.
Yeah.
And then, going back to his day job, whatever arrangement this is, he rides on that train that has all that exhaust kind of blowing over the people riding on it, whatever that is. There's really nice moments in there of like him cutting off a piece of meat for his Eopie.
Eopie, yeah.
And again, I think sort of creating his own hope and finding some way And I think in those moments is when those are when you see Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Like a little flicker.
He's still there.
Still there, that kindness, that good-naturedness, that character who could not be swayed by the dark side is feeding a new Obi when there's nothing else going on in his life.
And maybe let's call this out too. The only reason he might still have hope, because it's not soon after that you get that dialogue between him and Owen, and he's like, when the time comes, he must be trained. And if anything, that's the one thing he's holding on to.
Yeah,
is Luke. Luke is giving him a purpose still.
And Owen is trying to chase him away, and so he's fighting against that. That's got to be mentally exhausting.
Yeah, for anyone that's gone through like divorce and like the messiness of family, like this probably is relatable in some of those ways. So there's never been a more relatable character in Star Wars especially, where you can look at and feel like you connect to him on some level, right? Given whatever you've gone through. Again, we see him in such a dark place, and to the point earlier of like, he never gives into the dark side in all of this. He provides hope to a lot of people who might be going through similar things, Oh
my gosh, yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
I think that's the beauty of his story overall, is that he provides a glimmer of hope to people who are struggling with something.
Yeah.
Which, let's get to maybe one other lesson that I kind of found from this.
Sure.
And it's a bit connected between parts 4 and 5. So there's a bit of dialogue in part 4 that I really like, where you see him trying to move the object on the table and how he's struggling with that. And Tala sees him and jumps in with her kind heart and says something to try to help this man who's obviously broken in this moment and really trying. And she reminds me that she says, your body is not the only thing that needs to heal, Ben. The past is a hard thing to forget. You just need time. That's all. And then Ben responds with, some things can't be forgotten. And I thought like Obi-Wan, he can't forget all of these tragedies and pain that he's endured. And like really, he can only embrace it and try to rise above it and keep fighting the best that he can. And he's struggling with that. He's trying to be the best version of himself. He's trying to come out of this hole that he's in. And he's just having a hard time with it. But like, he's not ready to forget the past is the point of that line. And Tala doesn't have a response until part 5. And then part 5, she comes back in just out of nowhere and is like, some things you can't forget, but you can fight to make them better, is what she says. So she finally, after taking some time, thinks about it. And responds to his point about trying to forget the past. And then it immediately jumps to third sister and reveals her past right after that, who is also trying to deal with, the struggles that she's had to go through. Neither of them have a past they want to remember, is the point. And eventually he learns to fight for it in that moment and do exactly what Tala says, and is inspired by her sacrifice. And I think that's the resolve that he needed to then move on from the past. Because then as soon as that happens, he knows how to defeat Vader now. And he enacts a plan that, eventually saves everybody, including himself, and actually sets Priva down on the path of getting over hers too. So it's an interesting lesson, though. It's just interesting how they connected all of those pieces of dialogue together. And then the theme of like fighting to forget the past.
Yeah.
Eventually starts to happen, and to juxtapose then Reva and Obi-Wan on their journeys together.
I love that. Something that I thought of when you were talking about the first conversation between Obi-Wan and Tala. There's a book that is really well known in different circles of people who are overcoming something, trauma or whatever else, and it's called The Body Keeps Score. And the idea is basically that you can sort of compartmentalize in your mind and put things out of your mind or avoid thinking about them as much as maybe you should be thinking about them and so on. But your body doesn't forget. Because when you're stressed out, when you're feeling frustration or fear or whatever, there's adrenaline, there's all this stuff sort of coursing through your veins. Your body's having a reaction.
Yeah.
And you can lie to yourself and say, oh, it's not happening, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, another thing I think people have praised in this show is Obi-Wan's physicality and how he physically shows kind of the burden of stress that he's been carrying.
Yeah.
How he physically shows sort of being defeated a little bit too. And some of it is all the stuff that you've been talking about of like the Clone Wars just ended on a horrible note, disconnected from loved ones, people he cared about, lost his identity and so on. And he can kind of go through his day cutting up fish and things like that, but his body's kept score in some ways. And I think Ewan McGregor plays it in a way where it really shows. He's always sort of like on the edge of grimacing and sort of bent over a little bit and showing what looks like discomfort, but like discomfort that he has come to know and just sort of lives with all the time.
Yeah.
So I think there's something about that is played really well, but it also reminds me of one of the lessons that I got from this actually comes from Tala.
Yeah.
That I think is somewhat obvious, but didn't really strike me until I kind of said it out loud to myself. But there is a wisdom in doing good wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't necessarily project yourself into a position where you have all the power in the universe to do everything you'd like to help everybody you'd like.
Yeah.
But maybe from where you're seated today, you can use that opportunity to help in some way.
Yeah.
And I think some of that mirrors Obi-Wan's story, where he kind of rediscovers his ability to be helpful and rediscovers his ability to be maybe a lowercase h hero in some ways.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity of like, well, I'm here, I'll follow through on it, but it's not something that is very grand in its design or its aspirations or anything.
Sure.
So I think that's a nice little thread that kind of runs through a couple of character stories in this and maybe something in our own lives.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Tala herself is just like a walking example of how to be your best self when you've been dealt a pretty difficult hand.
Yeah.
Like she came into the Empire seeking purpose and trying to help and be better and do better. And when she
found it, but not the way that they served it up to her.
Not the way that they served. Exactly. When she realized that she was misaligned to the goal and purpose of the Empire, she went and found her own purpose without like openly rebelling, by the way, by using her skills and tools as a spy.
Yep.
And we're about to watch Andor do something very similar too, by the way.
Yes, we are.
Which is cool. So it's just a great lesson. It's not saying like, hey, if you don't agree with your company, then spy on them. No, wherever you are, I'm trying to like tie this to you, the listener, me as well. No, it means, if you're in a situation where you feel like your values and your morals could be compromised, you don't have to stand for it.
Yeah.
You can stick true to who you are and what values you hold, and still be the best version of yourself. I feel like I live that sometimes personally. I won't elaborate too much on that, but like I mean I think that's just anybody that feels like they're trying to live the best version of themselves.
Anybody in the world interacting with the rest of the world is going to have that conflict.
Exactly. I think that's good point. That's anybody, right? That's politics.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're talking to someone who just doesn't see the same politics the way you do. It's school. It's work. It's everything.
It's Star Wars Twitter.
It's Star Wars Twitter. It's especially Star Wars Twitter. But Tala is a good example of that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any other lessons, by the way, on your end? I've got maybe one or two more that I can go through.
Yeah. Let's finish up with your one or two.
Okay. You don't want to?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'll just finish up with part 6, which I think is.
Please. Look,
there's not a ton of lessons from this. I mean, it's just great action. It's great dialogue. It's a great way to kind of put a cap on everything that we have seen in this whole entire series. But I think there is something there around. Remember that whole thing I said, like passing through, like going through the path of night to reach the dawn. Like this is the path of night. Face Vader, face him again, and come to terms with the past. That was the lesson he needed to learn this whole entire time, and he's finally ready to face it. He has his strength again. He's in the right mindset, and Obi-Wan's embracing the challenge of going toe to toe with his, I guess, arch nemesis. But at this point, really, it's still just Anakin in his mind. And so after getting the amazing fight sequence, which I still watch and get goosebumps, the way that's done, like that might be one of the best. I don't want to say best lightsaber fights, but one of the best like character development moments in all of Star Wars, I have to say. Because in just a few lines of dialogue, they connect the fight from episode 3 to the fight of episode 4 and the mentality shift that Obi-Wan is going through, where I guess what's interesting to me is the solution to all of Obi-Wan's problems ended up being Anakin and all of his difficulties that he's faced over the last 10 years. The fact that Anakin ends up being the person who tells him, you didn't kill Anakin, I did. And that is what he needs to hear to eventually accept that Anakin's death was not his fault. Anakin died before that lightsaber fight when he turned his back on the Jedi, went to the temple, helped execute Order 66. That's when Anakin died. And that wasn't Obi-Wan's fault. That was Anakin's fault. And that's when he accepts, so my friend is truly dead. And he goes from viewing Anakin as his Padawan to Darth Vader, his nemesis. And just that is him. Now I'm realizing, like, that's him forgetting the past. This thing that he struggled with the whole time, that Tal is like, some things you can't forget. This is his way of forgetting it. It's changing his point of view in a way that helps him overcome his trauma. And it's what he needs. So even though it means that he kind of had to tell a little lie to Luke later on, from his point of view, it was the truth that he had come to realize. And it was important to him to then eventually move on. And then, of course, once he walks away from that fight and, comes to terms with Reva and with Luke and with Owen, he gets what he's been after this whole time, which was seeing Qui-Gon and getting his further training. But that was his path. That was his nightly path that he had to walk to get to the dawn. And we actually see that play out in the dialogue that happens after the fight, not the fight itself.
Yeah.
So that was the last lesson I took, and how artfully it kind of connects the broken man to the man that's found himself, and the way he done it had to do it was very artfully done by everyone involved, by Ewan, by oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name. We said her name like 3 times in this. Deborah Chow.
Yes.
And writing this and figuring out the ways to connect this. So I applaud it. But yeah, anyway, I'm done.
Beautiful. Beautifully said.
Do you want to say anything else with that?
No. I think that's got a nice final word quality to it. But if you, dear listeners, have any lessons that you've taken away from the wonderful character of Obi-Wan Kenobi, whether they be on themes that we've talked about today, themes of overcoming and self-discovery and mental health and all that heavy-duty stuff that he has to deal with, or anything else, and any other ways where the character's wisdom has played into your life, we would love to hear about them. So hit us up at Starbros Podcast on Twitter. Send us an email, thestarbrospodcast@gmail.com. We always love getting those messages, and we do our best to reply as quickly as we can, but please be patient. Sometimes it takes us a couple days. We get about 1 email a week, and it takes us about a week to respond.
That's true, actually.
And if you like the show, please consider hitting the subscribe button and leaving a review saying that you like the show. We really, really appreciate that. And that goes a long way. It just makes us feel good. We don't make any money off of this.
We're just having a good time.
We're just having a good time, and it's nice to know that other people are having a good time. And one of my favorite things is always to go on and see where people are listening from. And it seems like Germany's been shooting up the charts.
Interesting.
So if you are in Germany, danke. We are so glad to hear that. We're so glad to see that you are listening. We hope that you're really, really enjoying it. And send us an email if you're the one cool German guy or girl who's listening.
Yes.
And just thank you very much for taking the time to hang out with us, and thank you for being patient. Took us a couple weeks to get this episode out, but we'll be back next week talking about Cassian Andor.
Cannot wait.
It's going to be awesome. We're going to have 3 episodes to talk about, and then we're going to be talking about that for the next few weeks and just really enjoying that whole ride. And I think it's going to be a ride.
It's going to be a long ride. So we'll talk about the 3 episodes of the next one, and then probably 2 episodes a week after that as we go through it. That'll probably take us to like November or something.
It's going to take us to mid-November.
Yeah, and then at some point we will do lessons from Andor, I'm guessing.
and then we have, don't we have the 5-year anniversary of The Last Jedi coming
We have
up?
the 5. Oh yes, we've been waiting for I've been waiting to talk about this since we started the podcast.
We've been waiting for this for a couple of years.
Yes.
So we've got that coming up this fall, fall/winter. So
and maybe half of our listeners tune out for that one, but I don't know. It feels like it's split, right? But
yep.
But we will be talking about that come December 15th, I think was the day that it came out.
And we're gonna try to get Ryan Johnson on the show.
That would be awesome.
I can legally say that. We will try.
We will try. We will try anything.
Yes.
Yeah. Even if we just get I don't know, the kid.
Let's get Alden on the show. Let's interview somebody who interviewed.
There we go. There we go. I like that. I know someone that knows someone who knows Ryan Johnson.
But so you have that to look forward to. We have a lot of new Star Wars content coming out, and we like to jump on that stuff and talk about that. And so we'll be talking about Andor, but then we're gonna jump back into good old The Last Jedi from 5 years ago. Can you believe it?
Cannot. Nope. And I'm just glad that time has passed, because that means that we can continue enjoying it without hearing as much of all the hate that was surrounding it. Which means, by the way, if you didn't like it, that's totally fine.
Totally fine.
I'm just talking about like the literal vitriol that was out there.
Can I share something? Can I share something? So it's still out there.
Oh, I know. I know.
I'm
just more deaf to it now.
Me too. But except for certain instances, and I'll share a couple. So I have the privilege of doing a lot of the interaction online, and you jump in as well. You do a lot of
occasionally.
Yep.
That's your space. Yep.
But so I get to.
You're good at that.
Thank you. I get to have some interesting back and forths with people on Twitter, on Facebook, representing the Star Bros podcast, I should clarify. And just very recently, there have been a few threads on Facebook specifically about The Last Jedi and about how people are kind of, call me crazy, coming around to it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Didn't see that coming.
And so...
Actually, I kind of felt like that would happen eventually.
Hot take. I think in like 10 years, people are going to be like, this is one of these Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
But
yes, I agree.
It's going to take time.
I mean, the prequels, that's the treatment they're getting now.
Yes.
So I think that what is happening to the prequels will happen to The Last Jedi.
I totally agree. And we'll talk about that in some more detail. But a couple of times, the only times I've gotten like cursing, anger, like, what's the matter with you? Are you a shill for Disney? Blah, blah, blah. The only times I've ever gotten that is when I've said something positive on social media as the Star Bros podcast about The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So we don't expect everybody to tune into that episode. Maybe that's the week we get a lot of
Maybe that's when we get a lot of emails. I think our buddy Dan might email us. You probably email us right after this show again, because I don't think he liked it, and that's totally fine. Again, like we said, totally fine.
No, I want people...
We'll have a good, honest discussion about it.
Yeah, we will.
The good and the bad.
We want people to enjoy the Star Wars that they like, and then set aside the stuff that they don't.
Yeah.
And we're not going to try to convince you why you should like something or why you shouldn't.
We're just going to talk about why we like it.
We're just going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's coming up too. But that's
we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
We're actually giving you the episode we'll have later on.
Yep. Just a little taste.
Yes.
But yeah, come back in December for more of that.
Speaking of little taste, I gave a little taste of this Obi-Wan book. Did you like what I did there?
Yeah.
I'm pretty
you're
impressed.
even holding it up. I feel like I'm watching QVC.
I'm showing it to you now. Like, hands nicely portraying.
Whose hands? Is he the German kid who's listening?
Wow. You do speak English, right? I said the Hands. Okay, you knew that.
Oh, I'm thinking of Hans.
Yes, you are. Anyway, I had this perfect segue teed up, and you've completely distracted from it now.
Success.
No, I gave a little taste of the Be More Obi-Wan, and I strongly encourage, like you said, if you have some thoughts on Obi-Wan, you want to email them to us, let us know. But I actually suggest reading this book too, and purchasing. It's not expensive, and like I said, it's not hard to read. But I found myself as I go through it, like the main sections about like facing your challenges, keeping perspectives, and being true to yourself. Like as I'm reading, I'm going, yeah, we saw this all happen in Obi-Wan, and it kind of made me appreciate the series even more reading this. So, and helped kind of inspire me in preparation for this episode. So I would say pick it up, read it. If you love Obi-Wan as much as I do and want him on your shelf and want to be more like him, it's a perfect book for you.
Your favorite character.
How'd you know? Did I tell you that?
You did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I figured I did.
All right.
Anyway.
I think,
You done? Is that it? Well,
did I do it? You just did it.
I did it.
Yep.
Well, oh my gosh.
Do I have to leave now? This is my house.
This is your house. Yeah.
Is it? I think there's one more thing to say.
There's one more, and it is your turn. Well, go ahead.
Well, it's a wrap.
That's how we're going to do it from now on. Well,